But I don't think everybody's going to agree on how much wildlife we need in residential areas.
George, do you need the question read?
No.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm not trying to come across as a know-it-all kind of person here. My company actually does habitat management plans and resource plans. So the first thing I would do is hire someone. I mean, if you wanted this to happen, I would hire an expert to do a wildlife management plan for the entire village and identify where areas are that wildlife would be and how we can best supply their habitat needs. I would also include people in that sort of formula, because I tend to look at things in a holistic way. So I think people and wildlife interact together, and we need to look at how we interact and how that should be done as well. We have a lot of open space, like Gilbert said, and I think it's really great we have as much as we have. I bet there's not another village in New Mexico, maybe even towns or cities, that have as much open space set aside as we do. One of the things I think we ought to do too is look at open space from a people perspective. We tend to look at it from a viewership perspective, the view from our cars or our bikes or walking by. And I think there ought to be some interaction with our open space for people as well. So maybe trails that are protected and other kinds of wildlife enhancing kind of efforts that could make our open spaces better.
Joe?
Thank you. So I get an hour and a half on this? That's a joke. Oh, 1 minute?
No, 2.
Oh, 2. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Wait till it starts. Okay. Friends of Los Ranchos, we have spent 20 years, and that's me, on doing wildlife preservation and open space. The Del Norte open space, I went through 3 mayors, and we went to the legislature, got funding for it. It is a spectacular open space. We have taken these trustees through that open space. We've asked for help on it. It is dead. They have killed it. The trees are dead. There's going to be a tree planting. So in 20 years, probably past our lifetimes, we may get trees back. It is awful. We have spent, we led the bond election for the Agri-Nature Center, the Anderson Vineyard. George helped us on that. $5.6 million. We led the Patty Anderson purchase of her property, which everybody's taken credit for. We had Fergus go and talk to Mike Anderson. We got that rolling. We sponsored the signs that said, please pass the open space bond election last year. That's us, not just me, that's us. We have worked on the Elwood Park on Osuna, protecting it. We're still wanting more open space. Our village of Los Ranchos is extremely historic. Our businesses are destination businesses. That's where we get our money from. They're not going to come down here if we look like San Mateo, Osuna, or Eubank with massive redevelopment that our village was founded in 1958 to prevent. We want to bring people down here, spend money, pay it, and preserve our quality of life. We have incredible acequias we've got to preserve. Our trails are unbelievable. I've got the whole map out in my car that will take up this whole front area. This is a fabulous thing. Thank you all.
Surprised nobody mentioned crane.
Okay, let's go back to an individual question. And George, I'm going to start with you. Hank Kelly. George.
Oh, sorry.
George, this question is for both you and Gil. start with you. We have been sitting, you and I and Gil, on the Citizens Advisory Committee and working for months now on the pilot cluster housing project. Yes, it's a great effort, but we haven't gotten very far. Why did you vote for that ordinance in the first place?
The pilot, so as I said in the beginning, Hank, I'm not a politician. I didn't decide to run until 2 years ago when I ran for trustee. That was, Gil, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was the second meeting I attended. And I have to say it was a mistake to vote the way I did without having enough time to really review that ordinance. But I'd have to plead, let's see, I'm having a hard time answering that because I did vote yes. I did vote yes. I'd have to say that I didn't have enough time to review it wholly. I probably trusted that the trustees and the mayor before me had intended the best for that ordinance, and it became pretty obvious to me very quickly that the citizenry of Los Ranchos just didn't want it to be done that way, and I feel good about what I've been able to do to help get that back into alignment with the prevailing village views about the conservation ordinance.
Gil, would you answer that, please?
Yeah, I mean, I started out with my opening remarks telling you the things that I was proud of, and I think it's important to own what you've done that you wish you had done differently. And George is correct. I think it was the second month that we were trustees. We were handed this ordinance, which we did not construct, and we were told it was in accordance with the master plan, right? And everybody wanted it. Well, it turned out it was too generous, and that's what we're going back and we're redoing that. But I want everyone to pay attention because this is how these kind of things happen. We don't want to work in a vacuum, and so we're going to come out with the changes, and you need to look at what we're doing and keep us from making that same mistake again. So we have a group of people here. I don't know if it's a representative sample of everyone out in the village. Maybe it is. But we'd like to hear from you and we need to advertise what we're doing in the village vision so that everybody knows what we're up to.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
Who wrote the pilot? Who wrote it? Who wrote the conservation pilot project thing?
I don't know if I could answer that.
I can answer that question.
Mayor?
The planning and zoning employees that were working for the village in 2019, 2020, and 2020, they wrote it. They thought that the master plan wanted cluster housing. It seems like the village of Los Ranchos does not want cluster housing. You don't want it, and that's okay. Okay, well then, how do you get there? That's the question, and that's what the Citizens Advisory, your report the other night was magnificent. It laid it out perfectly. So that's where we are. Do we or do we not want something like cluster housing? That's a real question, tough question. It really is.
I don't want to carry it on to conservation right now. I think we have a lot of questions that are.
I just wanted to
Okay,
know who wrote
we're
it.
going to go ahead. Donna, if you don't mind, I'm going to pick one for you. George? Do we
Mr.
have
Mayor.
a microphone?
I'm right behind you. Give me a break.
Don, we heard earlier this evening, and when we met over at the Agricultural Center with all the drawings and whatnot of the palindrome, that we knew right away there wasn't enough parking for that amount of apartments. What are we going to do about the parking for that particular project? How fair is it to the people who live in the surrounding areas that are going to have their neighborhoods impacted with all the traffic and all the off-site parking? What can we do?
Okay. I have been told by Palindrome that there is more than enough parking. That's what they're telling me. We're gonna find out, but that's the bottom line. They claim that there's more than enough parking, that they're building the parking ahead of all of the other things that are gonna go in there, because there's gonna be a grocery store, there's going to be an amphitheater, there's going to be an acequia, there's going to be a demonstration farm, there's gonna be a boutique hotel, but that is still down the road. That's a year or two away from now. They say, and they've told me this, that there's more than enough parking. We're going to find out. We're gonna find out.
Well, okay, okay, the question was answered. I know there's a lot of response from the crowd. And in all honesty, because we haven't been able to see all of the details, it's hard for anybody to answer. And I'm just gonna suggest to you all, we are going to have, as per Chad Reneker request, to come October 4th, and we're gonna hear from Chad Reneker on the details. So there'd be a chance at that meeting to have a Q&A with Chad Reneker and get those questions answered, okay?
That'll be held right here.
And it'll be held here. Okay, Joe. Joe, email 2.
Sorry, email 2.
Microphone, Amy.
Okay, Joe. You were also the only resident in attendance who introduced himself at the October 2020 Board of Trustee meeting when the Memorandum of Understanding with Palindrome was approved. When asked at the end of the discussion if you had any questions or comments, you stated you had none and you thanked the mayor. Why did you not raise the issues you are now making a case for at that time, particularly the approval process about which you have pointed out numerous times? The perfect moment to start such discussions would have been then, with follow-up to village residents through emails or your blogs. Even though there were pandemic restrictions, you could have reached out. Why did you take no action then when some changes may have been possible?
Thank you. The first part of your question is really telling why I was the only person there. Out of our Friends of Los Ranchos group, we were watching. Now I believe it was 2019, when the trustees accepted the development agreement, or the Palindrome as a developer, Alan Lewis and Mary Holman were the only ones that could vote. Pablo Real couldn't because he had a conflict of interest because he was selling his houses. Don had moved up from trustee to mayor. Alan Lewis looked at us. Loretta, I don't know, Loretta might have been there. He looked at me. He said, trust me, I'm your trustee. We've looked at all this development. You can trust us. Well, here we are. You're asking me a question why I didn't trust it back then. We had a village center. This is not a village center. This is a housing development. If you guys haven't driven by Osuna, and that's a facetious statement, you've driven by it, that awful jammed up on our street housing development, it is not a village center. What we approved as a village center was, and actually George did a lot of it, it was step back. The housing that we talked about was senior housing, back on the acequia, step back. George talked about how the Taos Pueblo, La Fonda, all were step back. Beautiful northern New Mexico style development with income generating businesses. This is a housing development. And the reason for that, as Chad Reneker said, it's money. It's all about money. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. We're going to go to all candidate questions, and I'm going to start picking, rather than emails, I'm going to start picking people that are here, okay, to give you guys a chance to ask. This is an all, Lois Meyer, all candidate question.
I do not want to regurgitate the past. I ask all of you candidates to say publicly, for the record, if you are elected mayor, first, what will you do as quickly as possible to deal with the multiple illegalities involved in the planning process approved by the village administration for the Fourth and Asuna project? And secondly, how will you appease as soon as possible the hundreds of us as villagers who are angry and have tried to halt construction of the eyesore that is the so-called Village Center project? Two questions.
Is this working? I think so. So the first thing we would have to do is get a new village administrator, since our current one resigned. And shortly thereafter, we have to lay out objectives for all the different staff members, and so that they understand what it would be expected of them. So in regards to the village center, how can we improve things? It remains to be seen how much leverage we actually have. There's a development agreement in place, which means it's still up to two people, the new village administrator and a P&Z director, okay? So parking is something, yes, maybe we have some leverage there, because I know we're going to be getting complaints for decades about that. I don't know how to undo those apartments. I have to be frank with you. You know, I keep telling you there's $58 million in investments. Nobody's going to mow those things down, and they're not going to walk away from that and say, oh, my bad, right? It's just, I just don't see that happening. But guess what? During the time when we had lawsuits going on, and we had a hearing, an appeal come to the Board of Trustees, that's time lost that us trustees could have been working with Palindrome to talk, because we can't talk to them. Once something comes to the village, it's on the agenda, we can't talk to them, ex parte. But going forward, I certainly would try to do something about parking. That is the #1 thing on my mind right now, because I know we're just going to get hammered with complaints. And I understand that they say there's going to be plenty of parking because it's shared parking. I just have my doubts. I really do.
Time, George. Time. Let's go ahead and go with George. You have the question?
It was a pretty complex question. Let me see if I can answer it. The first thing I would do is the same thing Gil would do. I would look for a very good village administrator. We would have to do that. That's the very first item on my mind. I'd also try to talk to all of the other village employees about their place in the village, and that I don't have any issues with them at all. And I'd like to find out what they would like to see happen, how they'd like to see it happen. I want to hear from them, just like I want to hear from you. As far as Palindrome's concerned, I can't talk about it per se, but I can say that I would be more than willing to revisit the contract to see what could be done to make it more open with the people of Los Ranchos and allow people to see more about what's being planned in the future. I do worry the same as Gil does. If for some reason Palindrome if for some reason the lawsuits that the Friends of Los Ranchos put upon the village were won, it would be very difficult for the village to afford the legal case that would ensue. That would that probably would bankrupt the village. And I wouldn't want to see that happen. So I think we'd have to have a lot of advice about that at that point in time, if that were to happen. But yeah.
Thanks, George.
Thanks.
Mayor?
The answer to that question is very simple. The village faces a brutal conundrum. Let me tell you what that means. Palindrome is not gonna go down without a fight. If the village were sued by the developer, it would be a breach of contract. And at the end of the day, when all the legal fighting goes on and is ended, George is correct. The village will be bankrupt. There won't be a village anymore. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but the village approved that project when the 2016-2017 Planning and Zoning Commission wrote that ordinance. Then the mayor has to follow the ordinances, as I said. You cannot not do that. Once you enter a contract, and that contract was entered in October of 2020, there would be unbelievable consequences to breaching that contract. I just have to be completely honest with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Joe?
Thank you all. And I want to remind you that you all have been friends of Los Ranchos in this action. I have stood up. We have 2 lawsuits against the village to just obey their ordinances. I have stood up in the Open Meetings Act. Personally, this is me. I'm hanging out here, guys. You want to know people that are stepping up? I'm doing it. The Open Meetings Act had to be filed by a resident. That's me. We filed it. Now, the one thing in this whole thing, the development agreement that Nan Winter did, the village is protected. Everybody's saying, oh, the village is going to be bankrupt. Well, BS. The development agreement that Nan Winter did protects the village extremely well. Palindrome's attorneys should have looked at the agreements. It is their problem. They're going to have to fix it. Now, Palindrome may get sued by Bank of Albuquerque, by Burnco. They gave, the whole property's been given away to Burnco, if you didn't know that, because of the loan from Bernalillo County. And their Hunt Brothers, the other development problem. That's their problem. It's not the villages. We're not going to get sued. We have to obey our ordinances. And I've asked our trustees and I've asked our mayor to do that. And that's what is in our suit. Obey the ordinance. We don't want money. We don't want to destroy the village. We're going to fix this. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. David Montoya, candidate all.
Thank you. So I don't know if this is working. Can you hear? So I just want to remind you, and a lot of people do know, that many parts of 4th Street, almost all of them, except the farthest south, were annexed in the 80s on the west side, and on the east side in the 90s. And I just want to make sure, I'd like to hear from each one of you whether you will support what the village committed to us, the owners, and all the people on 4th Street when we were, when we agreed to be annexed. They said it would be beautiful, you would take care of us, and last time I looked, it was 40 years before we put one little piece. And I just want to make sure that you go on the record of saying how you will support it. Will you support the current design or better than the current design that's out there at 60% at this point? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, David. The 4th Street project was basically discussed by the late Mayor Harry Stowers in the late 1990s. He even wrote an article in his he had a pamphlet that he put out, which was prior to the village vision. Larry Abraham, when he became mayor in 2004, said, at some point, we have to start revitalizing 4th Street. 2005, 6, and 7, the village spent $7 million doing the 5 lanes around 4th and Osuna. It took another basically 11 years to move to the project that was finished in 2019. The cost of construction has risen so fast that the only way that project can ever really be completed is to have state and federal assistance. We have money obligated to move that project forward. The design, however, has got to meet standards. It's got to meet ADA, it's got to have a 20-year pavement, it has to have storm drainage. There's a lot of amenities that the people in the village want for that project. And that's what will happen in the future. But the cost of construction has risen from $9 million to $13 million just for the next phase, which is half a mile long. So we've got to have federal money, state money, and we met with NMDOT the other day. They've actually made a commitment to the village to help us fund the project as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mayor. Gilbert?
So David, let me see if I understand your question. You were asking about 4th Street in particular, not other services for the east side of 4th Street, correct? Yeah, so we all remember 4th, well, maybe not all of us, but I've lived here long enough to remember 4th Street, where you didn't dare walk along 4th Street and you didn't dare cross the street unless you were at a stoplight. It was pretty darn dangerous. Cars were going very fast on 4th Street. So phase 1 looks pretty nice, and phase 2, A, B, and C, taking us all the way to Ortega, will look like the village. It is not likely to have the brick sidewalks, but it will have sidewalks. It will be pedestrian friendly, and I think the objective here is not to put the cart before the horse, to improve 4th Street so that we will get the type of businesses that we care about. We care about, we like restaurants, we like art, we like shops, and if you slow down the traffic to 25 miles per hour, you will see more of that. And that, so I live on Guadalupe Trail. I live a short walk from 4th Street, and I do enjoy walking to the ice cream shop there and to Hobbs and to other places along 4th Street. I don't know if I answered your question fully, but thank you.
George, do you have a question?
I do. Thanks for the question, David. So as most of you probably know, we did design my company for the 4th Street project that got built. I think a conversation that I had with David about maybe 4 weeks ago or so really changed my opinion about where I was headed. I was originally headed with really being against the 4th Street project. I am not against 4th Street improvements. As a matter of fact, I think they should be done for the neighborhoods around 4th Street as fast as we can do them. However, I don't think that the way we're doing the next phases of 4th Street is the way I would do them. I don't think there was enough community input. The design for the project, the actual street design for the project is already done. All we're really talking about now is detailing it out and adding landscaping to it. I don't think it's the right way to go for how 4th Street should be designed. I think it should be designed community first and business first, not infrastructure first. It has to be designed so that it becomes part of the community. It has to be a main street, not more street. And so I think that's the way I feel about 4th Street. What I would do if I became mayor is I would take another look at what we're doing, involve the community more in the decisions that need to be made on that project, and then bring it forward with that in mind. Because I think when you don't look at the land uses, you don't look at the communities around 4th Street, you don't look at those neighborhoods, it doesn't integrate well. It becomes a street. How many of you have seen a project built and then not 6 months later a
the asphalt's being opened up so that somebody could put in a water line. Well, that's because somebody decided to make an improvement. Well, if you talk to the businesses and you talk to the citizens, maybe you can abate that a little bit. So I just already said it. Thanks.
Thank you, George. Joe? Everybody hearing okay in the back so far? Yes?
Okay, David, I'm not sure. Where'd David go?
He's right there.
Oh, there he is. I'm not sure whether it was west side and east side and 4th Street?
West side in the 80s, east
Okay.
side,
Well,
east side in the 90s.
I'll just tell you where I'm at. I grew up at 2nd and Osuna, 5 acres, back in we were on the north side of the Sari Hacienda. I rode my horse down Osuna. I rode my horse down past your house, Randy and Linda, and to go see a girlfriend back in 9th grade. I thought that's pretty tough guy, you know. I rode my bicycle to Taft. I don't even like driving down 4th Street anymore. Our traffic, it's traffic. We've got to work on this. I brought in Jonathan Rose back in probably 2006 to talk to the village, to Larry Abraham and Kelly Ward about our little tiny village center. It was going to be a small, nice grocery store. And this, you know, it's gone this huge thing. Jonathan said, you got to have a Main Street. So that's where this thing has started. And he looked at me and he said, who the hell are you? And I said, I'm a voice in the wilderness. And maybe I still am. I don't know. This is our village. We have to protect our citizens. 4th Street was supposed to, the next phase was supposed to be just pavement and go to 3 lanes. We've gone to a huge, I think it's $40 million plus. Our infrastructure, we need drainage. We probably need a lot of things, but we need to sit down and really look at it. David's concerned about it. You guys are concerned about it. Is that all we're going to be doing is 4th Street? I mean, does it really need all this infrastructure? And it's what scares me to death is I'm hearing from people I trust in the county that they're coming this way as a corridor for affordable housing. We've got more sites. George has identified sites along 4th Street that can be more housing. Do we need more housing? Maybe. Do we need or do we need a quality of life here for our businesses and to protect our residents that are living here? I think this is a big discussion. We need to have a major input on it.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Okay, candidate all, Sandria Cook. Oops. Go ahead.
Careful.
Where's the microphone, Tim?
I thought you were happy to get yours, sorry.
So my question is for all of you. I would like to know specifically what you are planning or what your hopes are, what your imaginings are for the traffic on 4th and Osuna. I mean, right now, it's pretty stupid. You'd have to be blind and a 3-year-old not to see that the traffic cannot handle what's going up. So I'd like to know some specifics, if you could give them to me.
I'm not a traffic engineer, so I would probably get one on board to look at Osuna from 4th Street to 2nd Street. I agree with you. It doesn't handle traffic very well. Amazingly, I never see lines back to 2nd Street. Rarely. Okay. I believe you. So shows you what I know. I think it's just too narrow, and the right-of-way is too narrow to have more lanes than we have. I think, I'm not sure. Something that the city of let me speak, please. Something that the city of Tucson did, and I think they're still doing, is they built 3-lane roads in parts of their city that were like that, and they alternated the traffic at night and in the morning during the peak hours so that 2 lanes could go in the morning and 2 lanes could go out in the afternoon. So it may be that there's enough right-of-way to build 3 lanes there. But again, I'm no traffic engineer. So I'd probably have a traffic engineer look at that along with a planner and look at that specific section of Osuna to see what could be done that would improve things without having to buy homes or something else. So
Why don't we go over to Joe and then we'll go down the line. Sure. Joe?
Thank you. Tell me where your area is. You're in that area?
Schulte.
You're on Schulte. Okay.
East Schulte.
East Schulte. Oh, there's. Years ago, I talked to R.J. Berry, who was the mayor of Albuquerque, and I think he started off good. He did a major redevelopment of Central, which is awful. You've got the BART running down it. I won't drive down that Route 66. It is awful. But he said the thing about being a mayor is making sure your toilet's flush and your garbage is taken out and the infrastructure of this. So the point of that is I'm not going to try to depress you on my feeling of what's going to happen to that whole corridor. I think we've got to slow that down. It's going to probably cost us $30 to $75 million to fix Osuna and 4th. It takes my breath away. I thought 30 was awful. I talked to a planner. She said, nah, 75 million bucks. I'm going, oh my God. She said, well, it doesn't matter. It's federal money. I'm going, oh my God, even worse. What? So we need planning. The traffic is awful. You're going to be doing right-hand turns. Only right-hand turns. We've got to work on this. This is going to be a big deal. I mean, all this stuff we're talking about is huge. And I think we need to work. Our trustees are good. We need to educate them. We need to train them. We've got new trustees coming in. We've got to fix our village. This is broken. This is big, big money. We should have, the infrastructure there is awful. I love Schulte Road. I walked, I rode the bike. It's awful now. You can't make a left-hand turn, period. You wait. You're going to be lucky if you can make a right-hand turn. I try to come across this from the other side over at the bank. So.
Time.
Okay,
Mayor,
that's it. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Can you take that one, please?
Yes, I can. The village is actually lucky. We own property along Osuna to the north. We don't own all of it, but we own most of it. And if 3 lanes are necessary, we'll put 3 lanes. It will not cost $30 million. I can tell you that right now. It might cost 8, it might cost 9, and it'll have to be a slower traffic. But we have a lot of the right of way. That's my answer.
There goes the park.
Thank you, Mayor. Gilbert?
So I'm not a traffic engineer, I'm just an everyday engineer. But I can tell you, engineers talk about problems using the words an over-constrained problem, meaning there's what we'd like to do, and then there's what we can do. So that intersection, yes, I've seen it back up to Edith. I mean, it's during rush hour. That's people coming that are work in the city are coming home, and it does back up. We get a lot of traffic on all the streets that connect 4th Street all the way to Rio Grande Boulevard. These are people that are just trying to take cuts to get across the river. So it's Chavez, Ranchitos, El Pueblo, and Ortega. Big problems. And I live in Guadalupe Trail, not as bad, but yes, there's more traffic. So here's a common sense solution. You make it slightly more painful to cut through the village than to stay on 2nd Street and go to Alameda to get across the river. And the way we do that is we have speed bumps, humps, and I know not everybody's for it, but these are little things that make it more painful. You get more officers patrolling. You put different features in the road to cause people to slow down. And so that's what we have to work with. So the mayor is right about that we could get more right-of-way on the north side of Osuna. You know, there's a bank there. I don't know. It's a tough problem. I'm sorry. I wish I had a great solution, but I don't.
Okay, what I'm gonna do now is, I think we're gonna try to expedite the questions and get as many in as possible. We are running out of time. We are gonna cut the meeting off at 7:30. That's when we have to. So I'm gonna ask that the candidates speak for 1 minute. We're gonna go through the remaining people that have had all candidate questions, okay? Okay, so Steve Garcia. And why don't we go ahead and let's start with George. All candidates in 1 minute, please.
My name is Steve Garcia. I've been in the village since 1958.
Into the microphone.
Okay. Anyway, I guess you might have answered this question. What liability will the village incur now if the palindrome project was stopped now? That doesn't stop at just the dollar amount, you know. The liability and the, you know, concerns of these villagers is much more than money. Yes. Our, you know, lifestyle is being totally ruined here. So I feel that if you do have to go and spend all this money, sue Palindrome, you should do it. You should turn around and stop this project, because it's not just dollars, it's also what's happening to us. You know, so, you know, we have a lot of concerns and you need to address them.
1 minute.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear a question. I mean, if you could just put that into a question, I'm not sure what you...
Are you willing to stop the Palindrome project?
I would have to say at this point, no. I would definitely talk to them about being more open with their project, but I would need a lot more legal advice than this little brain has to answer that question in the correct way. So
Is that
maybe
it would stop your contract? Is that why?
No, we're already done.
Let's keep it to 1 minute, please. And let's let the candidates answer, please.
So I would like to reverse the Palindrome project, go back in time. There's this thing called the development agreement. That's a contractual agreement. And there's a lawsuit that will be heard in district court. Many people that I've talked to don't think that's going to go anywhere. I just don't know how to do it. I mean, I like you say, hey, we've lost a bit of our village character at that intersection. I agree with everything what you're saying, and I wish I had an answer for you. I am sorry, I don't.
Thank you, Gilbert. Mayor?
The answer to that question for me is pretty simple. I took an oath, January 3rd, 2020, to uphold the village ordinances. Those ordinances were passed in 2016 and 2017. They were not changed. They're still on the paper. They're still there. Therefore, I'm not going to breach the contract. If a future mayor wants to breach it, the village is going to have to pay the price. I can tell you that right now. Okay.
1 minute, please.
1958, 1959. We're going to keep our village. We have 2 lawsuits in district court. We have an open meeting act. The village is actively working, the village attorneys, against us. I'm being blamed. I was being called a hero 2 months ago. Now I'm a demon, which may be more accurate than we know. I don't know. We're going to fix this. I can't say how, but we need serious national planners to come in and say, okay, here's what's going on. Traffic, parking, the intersection, this is a big deal. I can't say what's going to happen. We're going to have a judge, a serious judge, looking at this, and already looking at it in district court. It's probably going to be next year. What do? We'll find out, but we're going to preserve. I took the same oath he took back in 2013. I swear to uphold the ordinances of the village, the Constitution of the state of New Mexico, and the Constitution of the United States, so help me God. I'm still bound by that.
Time. Okay, next question. Thomas Gallegos. Question for all, and we'll have, if we keep the time schedule, we'll have Henry next and then Cindy last.
Okay, I've just got a couple questions. I'm Thomas Gallegos. I'm known as Tony. I'm known as Anthony. I've lived in the village since 1950. I've got 5 properties. I went to all the schools here. I taught at Taylor Middle School for 17 years, so I'm pretty familiar with the village. One thing that I don't know whether it's just I've heard, and I'd like to ask maybe the mayor on this one. I've heard that possibly Guadalupe Trail might be having sidewalks put in some places.
Absolutely not. Not under
Okay.
any circumstances.
Thank you very much on that.
Let me add one more to your question. Instead of putting asphalt, which I understand people don't like asphalt anymore, we're gonna go with a bituminous surface treatment, which is the color of the earth. It's the color of gravel. If you don't want that, then tell me you don't want anything at all, and we'll just leave it the way it is.
Let's let the questions.
All right, my question, my big question is the contract with Waste Management. I don't know if a lot of you agree with it. They've done a pretty good job, but I went to get a dumpster put at my place, a 20-yard dumpster, and let me just give you the figures on this. Waste Management, the price was $880. Okay, so what do? You look somewhere else. And the soonest they could get it there, this is today, the soonest they could get it there is October 3rd. Plus, you can keep that dumpster for 10 days. If you keep it any longer than 10, you're charged $30 a day.
Thomas, could I ask you to ask the question, please?
Okay, my question is, Waste Management is under contract with us. In fact, Waste Management,
Okay, could you ask the question?
Sure.
What's the question?
okay, is Waste Management franchised is one.
Yes, they are.
Okay,
Today.
franchise means that you cannot use anyone else. I went to the other 2 companies. If I use anyone other than Waste Management, there is a $500 fine.
Okay, so would you please ask the question? We've got to get.
Okay, second one. When is this contract negotiated, and who negotiated this contract?
Well, it's been a couple of years, and it was the trustees that approved it.
Okay,
So there'll
the
be
other
another
thing
one.
on Waste Management, is that they started out giving all of us the green dumpsters, every week dumped. They switched to once every 2 weeks. No deduction in price.
I'd like to ask my question.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, so. Do you
Okay,
have-
my question is, when is this thing negotiated again, and who negotiates it?
Mr. Mayor. We'll just
The
answer
governing
the
body will negotiate this probably in less than 2 years, maybe even a year from now. That's the best answer I can give you right now.
Okay, Henry, please, your question for all.
Yeah, this is for everybody. What about the schools?
Yes.
What about the schools?
Wait, okay, so would you please ask the question?
Yes, I would like to know what the members, those people running for mayor, what they might be able to do to promote schools in the village. That's what I'd like to know. What are your plans?
Joe, would you take that first, please? And then we'll just go down the line.
Okay, thank you, Henry. As you know, my wife was a teacher. She's substitute taught in all these schools. I've got a good background in APS. Our problem is that we have pushed alternative schools, which are very good. I was just up on Masthead. The charter schools up there, the traffic was unbelievable because everybody's taking their kids to schools. We've got to figure out how to make our schools viable. I've asked our trustees why we don't have a meeting with APS and with the board member for this district. I don't know why. We have Taft's great, but every one of our kids, Taylor, all the kids are on a free lunch and free breakfast and free lunch. It's because of the income. we're doing something that we need to fix. Our schools are the backbone of our community, period. And we got to keep them, we've got to work with APS, and we've got to work with the community. And they'd be great schools. Thanks.
Mr. Aaron?
Henry, that's a great question. As you know, and I know, Los Ranchos Elementary is a community school. And I support Los Ranchos to the maximum. I do everything possible to make sure that school is as viable as it can be. But you also have Taft, you also have Taylor, and so we gotta work with those other schools, okay? That's my answer.
Thank you, Mayor. Gilbert?
All three of our kids went to Los Ranchos Elementary School, and we're seeing enrollment drop, in particular in the middle schools, Taylor and Taft. For about 4 or 5 years, I did hands-on science as a volunteer. I didn't want any pay. I went to the schools, and the kids loved it. And we would do things. We would do different activities like weights and measures. We make hot air balloons. And play with electric motors and levers and mechanical things, and they loved it, and that's called inspiration, and if more of us do that, you'll see more people wanting to go to our schools instead of going to private schools. My wife was on the I don't know if they call it PTA, but you know what I mean, right? And so everybody needs to get involved in the schools. The mayor, I don't. Perhaps you've gone there and dropped by, but it'd be really cool if the mayor dropped into the school and said, "Hey, this is what mayors do, right?" And give little talks like that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor. George?
Henry, the first thing I would do is read the contractual relationships, read the contracts that we have with APS, because I really don't know what those contracts are about. The mayor might, but I sure don't.
They don't have.
I'd probably also.
There isn't anything.
There isn't.
It doesn't exist.
So then I'd go to the board of APS and talk to them about our schools, because obviously they're controlling our schools. I don't think we'd be able to have our own school system. I don't think we'd have the right amount of money to do something like that, maybe. But I'd investigate first, and then I'd go talk to APS.
Thank you, George.
Wasn't Taft on the list of one of the schools to be eliminated?
It won't be eliminated. It's gonna be a magnet.
Okay, we are now to the last, I think, question, and I think, Cindy, you have the honor for all candidates. And let's try to be as brief as possible, please. And I just wish somebody would have asked, what's your first 3 priorities you're gonna do when you become mayor?
But they didn't, and you're the moderator, so you can't answer.
I can't ask the question.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah, I believe that my questions have already been answered in the sense that my understanding is that the site development plan, the voting on that by the trustees was a way to stop the, at least construction that was going on, but I might be wrong about that. There is phases that are still going on, right? And it sounds like a lot of defeatism in the sense that you all have no input. Just go ahead, he says there's enough parking, we'll see. Okay, that to me is not planning. That is letting the developer plan. So how will you work in the next phase of Palindrome to get something that is not so ridiculous and hopeful that it's all gonna work out?
Thank you, Cindy. Joe, you want to start? And then we'll go to George, then Gilbert, then the mayor. And then we'll wrap it up. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. We have a big problem, I think, as the Friends of Los Ranchos and our legal committee. Roberto is wanting to bring in Palindrome to negotiate with them.
I am not negotiating with Palindrome. Please do not say that. Chad Redeker came to me and asked to meet with the group. Excuse me, Joe. Please do not put words in people's mouths.
I'll put words into your mouth here. We've asked that not happen. we have we're gonna call our legal committee to sit down and talk, because this is a big deal. And Chad has worked with these guys, he's worked with other people, he's trying to work Roberto. This is, I'm telling you, this is, okay, this is politics, I'm sorry.
Could you please answer the question?
What I do is, Mayor, one, we're going to have to hire a great administrator, period. Not somebody that maybe could learn in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. We're out of time. We need to sit down with our legal staff to figure out what is going on in the village. I don't know.
Time, Mayor? Joe, that's it?
No, it's not, Robert. So sit down. Shut up. So, just a second. I'll give you my last statement.
We're monopolizing our time.
Okay, my last statement. One thing we have to do is replace our fear with action. We are all afraid. I'm afraid.
Thank you, Joe, but you gotta give the other candidates.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go ahead, George, and then we'll let Gilbert and then the mayor. And then we're gonna call it quits. Thank you very much.
The next phases of Palindrome, I think this is the next phases of the Village Center project, and I think this is public record, is that there will be a grocery store, a hotel, and senior housing. None of them are planned, as far as I know, to be as impactful, I'll say, as the existing building or the start of the building that will be the apartments. I'm sorry?
The hotel is 3 stories.
It is. But it's set back, they did. But it's set back from the street is what I'm saying. It won't be as impactful on 4th Street.
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead, time.
Okay, Gilbert?
Okay, slight correction, Board of Trustees, at least not when I was on the board, approved any site development plans. There was an appeal that came to us that would have changed the process, which would have been contrary to the development agreement. So yeah, there are 3 sites left to be developed, and parking is a big problem. I agree with that. I don't care what they say about the shared parking, it's still gonna be a problem. We need to know what sort of leverage we have. So the development agreement does call for the village administrator and the P&Z director to do the approval, not us. So what we need to do is sit down with the administrator and the attorney and see what legal room we have and what leverage we have to give us more parking.
Actually, the development agreement calls on it to be submitted to them.
Okay.
It doesn't say that they.
We're gonna give the mayor the chance to respond.
Very quickly, I believe the village actually has significant leverage because 4, 5, and 6 are big properties. If the village residents want to start taking away stuff that's already been planned, and it really has not been planned because Palindrome doesn't own that property. The village owns that property today. So there is leverage, and we'll see what we do about it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you all for coming. And just to clarify, the meeting with Palindrome was requested by Chad Reneker, and we are having it so we get information from the developer as to what is in the plans and start the dialogue, and that's all. Thank you all.